This week I spent a lot of time farming. With the sun rising on day 89, I decided to check up on the potato and carrot farm. Which, of course, meant collecting more poisonous potatoes. I didn't show it on screen in the last video, but I've started chucking all of the poisonous potatoes into the smaller pond. I mean, I could keep them in a barrel somewhere, but why? Once I had dropped off the fresh potatoes in the smoker array and taken the already baked potatoes back to the composter system, I decided to harvest the carrots in the pond farm. These carrots are mostly here just to break up the wheat, and I'm going to need more bone meal, so why not just harvest them? The current plan is to eventually extend the underground farm, but I didn't really feel like doing that this week. At this point, I had 2 stacks of bone meal, so farming more oxeye daisies for stew seemed like a good use of my time. But then I ended up with more daisies than mushrooms, so I gathered more mushrooms too. Eventually, I stopped farming in order to combine the ingredients into stew to fill the top barrel. Well, it mostly filled the barrel anyway. I currently have only 20 bowls after all, and I refuse to craft more since I know I will be getting more anyway when fishing. Next morning I was still down to 7.5 hearts, so I continued to gather mushrooms. One thing I have learned is that I enjoy gathering the red mushrooms less. It just seems easier to dismantle the giant brown mushrooms, I guess. However, at this point, I had over a stack of each ingredient. So I thought, oh, what if I just fill this barrel with stew ingredients? You see, I've been struggling to figure out what to do while I wait to heal so that I can go back to netherite mining. I was expecting that I would be able to work on the trophy tower or some other building projects by now. But between the 2 empty desert temples, the 2 missing shipwreck chests, and the fishing loot tables refusing to give me anything useful, I haven't been able to upgrade my tools as quickly as I would have liked. But harvesting giant mushrooms doesn't require any tools other than your fists, and bone meal, of course. Besides, when I finally do get my upgraded gear, I'm not going to want to spend time farming mushrooms and oxeye daisies. I'm going to want to build and explore. So, for now, present me is going to do the monotonous prep work, but it will pay off. Unless, of course, I happen to die before I get upgraded gear, in which case I might cry. But that is not the present reality, so until then the mushroom farming continues. However, I did take a short break to chop down this acacia tree. I had forgotten that there was another sapling that grew up after I chopped down the last 2 trees in my front lawn. And of course, with mushroom and daisy farming, I'm going to need bone meal, which in turn means more root vegetable farming. However, I think I may have found a way to speed this up a little bit. You see, if you walk in Minecraft diagonally, you will actually walk faster than if you walked straight ahead. So, at least in theory, this should make planting and harvesting take less time. I still need to get used to it, but I imagine the impact on time management will be more noticeable once I extend the farm again, and thus planting and harvesting would take longer. Efficiency isn't just an upgrade for your pickaxe. However, by the next morning, I was back to 9.5 hearts, so I returned to netherite mining. Of course, that meant more fire punching. I found 1 piece of ancient debris while digging the tunnels, and I found a 2nd piece after the 3rd bed. However, I was down to only 2 hearts, so after emptying the lava trough, it was time to return home. Once home, I put the netherrack in the furnace system, put the lava buckets in the smoker array, and resumed stew ingredient farming. And of course, it wouldn't be a mushroom farming session if at least 1 didn't grow super tall. I guess it's fitting that it took 8 pieces of bone meal. It's still more than a little annoying to deal with, though. Next morning, I noticed that the carrots in the pond farm had regrown, so I harvested them. After throwing those into the composter, I checked on the underground farm. It wasn't quite ready. That was a little disappointing. Later, while taking down a giant red mushroom, I thought a rainstorm had started. However, it was just a large cloud passing by overhead. That was also a little disappointing. But that night, it started to rain. I still didn't get any helpful books, but I did get 3 more pieces of string which will eventually go towards bed mining. And a bowl for stew. I'm probably the only person who gets excited about catching a bowl. And string. The rain stopped in the afternoon on the next day. I dropped off the fish and picked up the potatoes for composting. With the baked potatoes in the composter, I checked on the underground farm once again. It was ready this time. Of course, since I've been burning through the suspicious stew, I figured I should go ahead and craft some more. And of course, there was more giant mushroom farming that night. By the next morning, I was back up to 9 hearts again, so you know what that means. Oh, nice! Lava! However, I was once again down to 2 hearts. I didn't mean to get this low twice in a row, but this is what happens when I get distracted and forget this isn't peaceful mode. Since I'll need paper, I quickly harvested the sugarcane around the smaller pond. I also did some very exciting barrel sorting. And after that, mushroom farming resumed once again. The good news is that this means I am slowly but surely becoming an expert at punching down giant mushrooms. In fact, I got this perfect run with a giant brown mushroom that night. By that, I mean that I didn't miss a block as I spun in a circle, working from the center to the outside of the mushroom top. I wasn't able to do that again this week, but I think I remember reading somewhere that it's supposed to take about 10,000 hours to become an expert. So, if I want to become an expert at punching mushrooms, I have at least a few more sessions to go. Regardless, day 94 was a very, very good day for me. I'm probably taking way too much satisfaction from this, but when you've spent so long chopping down mushrooms, you need to appreciate the small joys and victories in life. Yeah, harvesting red mushrooms is way less satisfying. I have no idea what my criteria should be for a red mushroom perfect run. If you have any suggestions for what a red mushroom perfect run should look like, please leave them in the comments below. I guess the nice thing about daisies is I never have to worry about pillaring up because they grew too tall for my stubby arms to reach. Later that day, I realized that if I was building up my supply of stew, I should probably try to gather the materials for more golden apples as well. Since 1.17 adds some very advantageous changes to gold ore, I decided to work at gathering apples. Unfortunately, I filmed this week before the update was released. And finally, the underground farm was ready for harvest once more. 3 more poisonous potatoes. And I had to make another lava run, emptying this section in front of the portal. I guess this means I can now safely collect that basalt whenever I need some. At this point, some of the oak saplings had matured, so the apple harvest began. I only got 1, but that's 1 more than I had before. Next morning, I was still chopping down oak trees. However, I then remembered this cave that opened in my front lawn. I hadn't done any caving for a while, and while I had been down there before, I remembered that it branched off to different areas that I didn't get a chance to explore. So I went down to check it out. I managed to find some iron, a kind of scary-looking ravine, and some more iron. Ever since I learned I'm not truly alone, I'm kind of scared of going underground, so I returned to the surface. Now that I think about it, that might be at least part of the reason why I haven't gone caving in a while. Ooh, a second apple! Since I was stuck at 7 hearts and I was feeling a little nervous from getting down to 2 hearts twice this week, I spent the rest of the night mushroom farming. One of the better things about mushroom farming is that it's another one of those activities where I can kind of turn my brain off. And I didn't even get interrupted by a thunderstorm this time. So until next time, take care.